You are live.
I apologize to everybody. We again had technical difficulties. One of these days we won't have technical difficulties
because we added extra people.
So we're being joined by Pricilla McCune, and Chris Weatherman is here, but he's here by phone. So Priscilla, if you want to introduce yourself and Chris.
Hi, I'm Pricilla McCune.
And I was in the Akitas for 25 years, and absolutely honored to be on with you today, and I'm even more honored to be on with Priscilla.
I'm Pricilla McCune. I have been in Akitas, Creo Akitas since 1976, and I was an excellent friend and whatever you want to call me with Chris Weatherman 25 years ago.
Awesome. Antonio, can you post the question up on the so I can see him?
Yes.
Okay. So, Priscilla, tell us how you got started in the breed.
When I was a senior in high school, there was a local dog show in a small town in Kansas, and I went to it and fell in love with this dog named the Mean Machine. I asked my father to go with me the next day, and the dog did him. And I said, Dad,
Oh my gosh.
to have an Akita. And he said, when you graduate from college, you can do whatever the hell you want to do. So my senior year in college, I started selling plasma so I could buy my first Akita. And I bought her right after graduation for $750 back in '76 from a gal named Cheryl.
A lot of money.
Down in Dodge City, Kansas, and that started my Akita career.
And Chris, do you want to tell us how you got started in the breed?
So I ultimately roomed in college with a friend of mine, and his parents had an Akita. I thought that dog was, a man amongst boys. He was just unbelievable. And here I was in college. They bred this dog. They were going to give the pick of the litter. They were going to take it back, give it away to some friends. The friends were in the process of a divorce. They didn't know that. So I was very opportunistic. I jumped in and I said, hey, I'd love to take that dog. So I live with your son, and he'll make sure I do right by the dog. And I signed a pretty formal contract that I would train him. And in 1979, he was the number one Akita in obedience in the United States.
Very cool.
Very cool.
Okay, Antonio, do you want to put up the next question?
Yes.
Priscilla, who were your mentors when you got started in the breed?
Actually, after I bought Kuma, of course, first Akita Kuma, I really did not see the gal that I bought my dog from ever again. And I really looked up to certain people, although they did not know it, like Dr. Sophia, who I admire immensely, Carol Foti, Rusty Short, BJ Andrews, but no one really mentored me. I just kind of went on my own.
Cool. And Chris, who were your mentors in the breed?
Well, early on, certainly Priscilla was. BJ with OBJ, Larry Simons, Matosu. Initially, I really wanted Satchmo is the dog that caught my eye, and I really wanted a Satchmo offspring, and I purchased one from Canucks Akitas. She was a daughter, and then the saving grace everybody knows is the saving grace was Dallas when I got her and Copper from Priscilla.
Very cool. Antonio, do you want to put the next question up?
Yes.
Priscilla, which dogs had the most influence in your breeding program?
Well, of course, I'd have to say Kuma, who produced Dallas Alice. And Chris took her tremendously far in the breed with his breeding program. I was able to breed her to a Satchmo son. I had contacted BJ Andrews to breed to Satchmo, and she said, don't you live in Nebraska? And I said, yes. And she said, well, there's a Satchmo Sun. And I don't know if you guys remember an ad in Akita World that said seeing double. And it had a profile of Satchmo and Hunky. That was his call name. And you couldn't tell them apart. So I went out to talk to Lynn and to breed my bitch. And I ended up buying him and brought him home. So I would have to say probably Hunky and Kuma were the foundation and the beginning and the strategy behind everything I did.
Very cool. Chris, who are the influential dogs in your breeding program?
Well, it's interesting because Priscilla and I have similarities there. So, you know, I salivated every time Akita World came out, and I saw that. And I started, you know, with this obedience dog. I took him to the conformation ring and soon realized that as much as I loved him, he probably was not what conformationally he should have been. So I started watching, and I went to a dog show, and I saw this dog, Jambles the Mean Machine, and Meanie. And I fell in love with that dog, and I fell in love with this tall blonde there too. I'm not sure who that was, but you know. Anyway, so that was hugely influential. And then I had the privilege also of living in Colorado and going to shows and seeing the very same dog, champion Shirasanjira Jin Hunky. And I thought, oh my God, this dog is unbelievable. And so those dogs, along with other Satchmo, you know, and OBJ lines, were really the start of where I wanted to go.
Very cool. Antonio, next question. Priscilla, what's your ideal type, and which dog and bitch represent that type for you?
I like doggy bitches. I always have. I like big boned, and of course massive head, and it's not a surprise to anybody. I like the red and whites with the black mask. So my ideal Akita would be maybe like a Hunky in a red coat, or I absolutely adored my shooter, and they all of course go back to Satchmo. As far as a bitch, I love Mariko and Ziva. They're half sisters, and they're out of Rachel, who I think is an ideal bitch. They have the small ear, they have the beautiful crest of neck. I'm kind of hung up on being a little shorter coupled and having good angulation, good movement.
And Chris, what is your ideal type, and which dog and bitch represent that to you?
Well, I won't surprise you. It's very similar to what Priscilla said. You know, I like a dog with a very nice head, a lot of cheek, short ears that are rounded at the top and fit in with the crest of the neck when baiting down. You know, a nice broad front, but not so broad that it impedes the dog's movement. Substantial bone, substantial size. When I say size, I'm not talking about 28, 29. I'm talking 26 and a half to 27, 27 and a quarter was my ideal dog. Cat-like feet, a tail that was nicely set and balanced that nice head, and you know, the moderate angulation, and I like the reach and drive, you know, that as opposed to a stilted type of a movement. So that's sort of what the dog that I would look for. Hunky definitely was that dog. Satchmo was that dog. There's been many. The one that really embodies that in my mind is probably Cherry Sapphire Boss.
Very cool. And Antonio, next question. Priscilla, what was your breeding methodology?
I will look at pedigrees, but I look at the overall dog. And when I go to a national, and people that are close to me know that I do this, I buy 2 catalogs. One of them is for public eye. The other one is for me. I take 6 or 7 different color of pens, and I truly write down things I like and dislike about a dog. I normally don't take a dog to the national because I'm there to look at a potential stud dog or brood bitch or a particular line. So I'll go through and I'll make a comment that the head type or side gait or angulation or thick thigh or rounded feet and ears, like Chris said. And then I'll go home and I'll pull up my pedigrees and look at my pedigrees. There are some pedigrees that I prefer not to get into. So I would eliminate that dog based on the pedigree. I am not afraid to do outcrosses and turn around and bring that offspring back into what I call my line. There are particular lines that I really like, and I try to stay within there. I'm also not afraid to do inbreeding. Inbreeding to me is when I would possibly breed a niece-nephew type breeding where I can go out the next breeding. And I have gone extremely out. I bred a beautiful bitch to Chester 3 or 4 years ago and got a beautiful offspring there. So I'm not afraid to do that and then turn around and bring her back into something in my line.
And Chris, what was your breeding methodology?
You know, I pretty much focused on line breeding, and I did some inbreeding as well. I looked for those dogs with a pedigree. I mean, this website that you guys have has been wonderful, a wonderful visit for me, because I was a pedigree nut, and frankly still am. And I look back and I see all these dogs, and you know, and the commonalities and the similarities, and I can almost look at a dog on this site and tell you where it came from. Then I, just for fun, I go to see where it came from, and I'm not always right, but oftentimes, you know, I am. So I wasn't afraid to come back in the line, and what I tried to do is I tried to take the best individuals and come back into the line to an individual that would correct those problems, as opposed to looking for that outside of the pedigree. I would occasionally, you know, look a little bit, but nothing, no blatant outcrosses, because I just didn't know what I was bringing in and what it would present in the subsequent generations.
Very cool. Antonio, next question.
I do want to add one thing. In all the years that I've known Chris, he probably has a photographic memory on pedigrees, and I used to utilize his mind for just that reason all the time. He was phenomenal.
I think we all did.
I can't even remember pants during the day, but then, you know, I never remember pedigrees. I'm not sure if that's a very valuable trait in life. What's up with that?
And we forgot to introduce that Francie with Mende Akitas is also sitting here, so she has joined us even though you can't see her. Okay, next question, Antonio.
How did you pick your next generation?
Priscilla, how did you pick the next generation? How did you select the puppies?
I think I'm pretty good at picking. If I whelp a litter, I think I'm pretty good at picking my puppy at day one, actually when he or she is still wet, and it doesn't change very often. And then, of course, I watch them as they grow up, and I'll pick him again at 8 weeks of age. If, as Chris said just a minute ago, if I'm trying to improve on something, then that is what I would like to keep. Say I needed a better rear, and at 8 weeks of age, you can pretty much see your rears coming and going. And so if that was something that I would want, everything else was exactly what I wanted, but the rear was better, then I would keep that, hoping that I could improve on my line breeding, either line breeding, inbreeding, or going outcross. And I do all three of those, but I tend to do more line breeding than anything else. So I would pick something that would complement my kennel and what I think I needed improvement on. And I don't always keep a puppy. I will co-own with someone that I think, or I will ask for stud rights if I don't want to actually keep a male here.
And Chris, how did you pick your next generation?
Well, one thing Priscilla said is, you know, you can't keep all these dogs. I mean, we don't have warehouses, and we couldn't do right by the dogs we did. So, you know, I would try to do very, very similar things. You know, I would take a look at dog A that was a sire and the dam, and I would take a look at that offspring and ask myself, is this puppy looking like it is going to grow up, which we don't never know for sure, but we have a good idea after doing this for a while. Does it have a little more angulation where I'm trying to improve that? Does it have a little rounder, more rounding ear? You know, and then I would incorporate that into the breeding program. If it was equivalent to its parents, I had no problem, you know, if I was working with other breeders, I'd place that kind of dog with them and see what happened. And example of this, I'm just going to use it because these dogs are all gone. But, you know, with Saber, Max, and Bullet, each one of them had a lot of qualities, and they were very similar. But those three dogs also, I think, produced a little bit different, not a lot. And it made sense to utilize that genetic pool and go back into a Bullet or, you know, something like that, and then evaluate from there.
Yeah, exactly.
Excuse me, can I
Okay,
ask you
Nick.
a question? Can I ask
Yes.
a question? Chris, when you were talking about these three males, three litter mates, and you said that they produced a little bit differently, were they producing more or less their own phenotype? When you say it was different?
That's a great question. That's a great question. But I think part of that equation is you got to look at the dam side too. So, you know, you breed them, if you bred them to the same female, I think there would have been a lot of consistency there, although each one of them produced a little bit differently. But here's an example. So we bred Dallas to Uriah, okay, high and mighty, no Goshen. And we had some nice dogs out of that. I always preferred Uriah to Widow, just my preference. Jody did too. And Tokyo Rose had Uriah in the pedigree. Tokyo produced differently than Dallas out of similar breedings. They also had in common Chersangira Jin in their pedigrees. And so it was just interesting to see how similar pedigrees produce different results. And I really, frankly, liked what Jody got out of Uriah better than I did what I got out of Uriah. I'm not criticizing that litter. There was some nice dogs in it, but overall, I really liked what Tokyo Rose produced in that case.
Okay, thank you.
Perfect.
And one question for Priscilla.
Sure.
Priscilla, you mentioned doing occasionally some outcrosses to compensate, to bring something into your line that you were searching for. Were you insisting that if you went to an outside stud that he would have a tightly bred pedigree?
Not necessarily a tightly bred pedigree, but I felt like I could bring in something that I was lacking in my own line. I have short tails, for example. So, and I wouldn't look at a dog, and that would be the only thing I would look at. Oh, this dog has a long tail. He might have a buggy head and everything else, but I'm going to breed to him for the tail. But if he had everything else I liked and a nice tail, and he was an outcross, I would take that chance. But I know it would be an outcross, and later on, then I could turn around and breed the offspring that I would keep out of that, providing it was better than both the parents. I would not keep a puppy that was not any better than the bitch itself. And then I could bring it back to my own line.
Okay, thank you.
So along those same lines, what were your struggles in moving the breed forward, and what were your biggest achievements?
Struggles, other than warehousing dogs, because at one time I had too many, And I couldn't get rid of them, or I didn't feel like I could get rid of them because they were part of my breeding program. I am very, very strict on how I place the Akita, and this is probably talking 20 years ago. I feel like I have lightened up a little bit, and mainly because of temperaments. And no, I don't think an Akita should be a golden retriever or a Labrador retriever, but I do think you have to watch how you place a dog, and mainly on temperaments. I think that we have bettered our overall conformation to a degree. There are some things we have really lost, but I think overall we have bettered temperament. And I'd probably say that was, I had 2 male Akitas that I thought were absolutely stunning, but I ended up putting them both down due to temperament, and I would not use them in my breeding program. I did not feel that if I ever went out of town, I could have trusted somebody to be able to go in their kennels and take care of them. And I just could not have that on my conscience.
Yeah. So what were some of your greatest achievements in your breeding program?
I'd say overall, I still produce, and I have always wanted to produce the bigger bone, bigger structure that I think we are trying to lose right now. Maintaining good heads, and of course, the red and white Akita.
Yeah. And Chris, what were your struggles in moving your program forward, and what were your greatest achievements?
Well, I think the challenges are trying to find a dog and a pedigree and the depth of pedigree to improve what you had, and without introducing some problems that you were unwilling to have, and I really was trying to be a stickler for PIPs and, PRA and some of those kinds of things. And that always worried me, introducing an outside line, unless I did a lot of research. And not that I didn't have that, by the way, but all the lines had it to a lesser or greater degree, and I was trying to stay away from that. One of the most disappointing things is placing a promising dog with somebody. They start showing it. 2 years later, they OFA it, and it doesn't OFA. It's devastating, and if you care about those people and the dogs, it's devastating to a breeder as well. So, I looked at that, and that's why I looked at, I'd find a dog, and I look at his litter mates. Had his litter mates been bred? Where their consistency in the litter? What did the sire and dam produce universally? For example, Mikado no Kinho-san produced with many bitches. Dallas produced with many males. And I would look at those kinds of things, and I would also incorporate the health consideration into that situation. So it was hard to try to find a dog within your line that would benefit your characteristics. But I really tried to do that. In an example, I wish I'd have bred the Haas. He had a better tail set. We were trying to get a little bit better tail set. But I did that with Dowda because I bred Dallas Ransom, who was Haas's father, and we did get a better tail set. She would have been our new foundation had that worked out.
And so what were your greatest achievements?
That's a great question. I don't know. We had some really good dogs. I guess I would have to say, Max, Saber, Bullet, Dude, Cowda, Duke, that Chris had. I think that Jody's dogs were part of that. And so Caliber was beautiful. And I really wish I'd have bred back towards him, but that's sort of when we were getting away from it.
Sure. Okay, Antonio, next question.
We have a question about, normally we make at the end about the
You need to speak louder. And
this is the next question. But
okay.
We do at the end.
Non si sente il microfono.
Normally,
okay.
we use this question at the end.
Yes. So,
So I think it's better
you
than
want
Richard. Richard asked a lot of questions from the members of the group.
okay.
Richard,
Comincio adesso?
yes.
Okay. So, Priscilla and Chris, I have some questions. I made a post on the Facebook page asking people to post their questions for you.
Okay.
So we'll start with Priscilla, and I have two questions from Paula Lane. And the first one is, which Akita that you bred were you the most proud of?
I would probably say present time would be Rico and Ziva, but historically, Hero and Shooter, I will admit they are not perfect. There were things I would have changed about both of them, but they're pretty close to my ideal.
Okay, and just to let the viewers know, in the album section, you can find about 60 photos of Priscilla's dogs and about 40 photos of Chris's dog. Okay, Barbara worked all night putting this all together for you.
Thank you, Barbara.
Never sleep.
Okay,
You're welcome.
the next question to Priscilla is still from Paula Lane, and she wants to know, what are you most proud of about your breeding program?
My type, I like my type, and I go to Facebook and I see Akitas, and if I were completely honest, some of them I'd put a vomit face on, and others. And I know we have all ugly dogs, but I think, is that really an Akita? And I think, where are these coming from? When I think we have struggled so hard in producing that big bare head with that small ear, and then I see a dog with, ears like my Picard and a narrow face. I mean, I just feel like we're backing up. So I would say my overall type and movement.
Okay, thank you.
You're really diplomatic.
Okay, the next question is for Chris, and it comes from Ilka Wagner van Zandt, and she would like to know what first attracted you to the breed.
I just, they were so regal and royal and very unique, obviously. And I think that look with that, Priscilla's that bare head, and, they didn't look like any other dog that you saw when you were a kid growing up or anything like that. They weren't a Golden, they weren't a Beagle. And there was an air about them that really attracted me to them.
Okay, and the same person, Ilka, she is asking, did you have any companions prior to your show dogs? You already talked about your first obedience dog. So I don't know if you want to say anything more about him.
I was a college kid and he lived with me. He was my pride and joy. And, I never, ever dreamt of showing dogs. And when I took him to classes, the instructor basically said, your dog is doing very well in this obedience. You ought to show him. And I said, what? What do you mean? He said, well, there's this obedience show. And the rest of it went from there. So I didn't even know that. And then I went to the show and I saw these other dogs, and other Akitas over on the other side of the arena. I thought, well, what are they doing over there? And, that was my introduction to the whole thing. So he was a wonderful dog. And, he was my companion for many years.
Okay, thanks. And Priscilla, Ilka would like to know the same thing from you. So the first question, was what first attracted you to the breed?
When I saw Jamil the Mean Machine in the ring,
Yeah.
70 or 46 years ago, his presence just took me in awe. And it was just his, as Chris said, the regalness of him, his presence, his ominous size, and of course his color.
Okay, and the second question to remind you is, did you have any companion dogs prior to your show dogs, Akitas?
Oh, I'm a Kansas farm girl. We had farm dogs all the time. As far as show dogs, I had an English setter that we showed for a little bit, but I did not have an Akita. But we had, a fox terrier, a 45-pound cocker spaniel, the English setter, um, the farm mutts, all that sort of stuff. I grew up with livestock and dogs all my life.
Okay, so your first Akita was a show dog?
My first Akita, I was extremely fortunate when I bought Kuma from Cheryl Drosty. I feel like I had a difficult time getting her pregnant. Once I did, I feel like I was very fortunate in producing the two puppies that I did out of her. And I feel very fortunate that Chris got them and took them where he did. That is one of my achievements, I guess I should have mentioned earlier, was Kuma. I took her in the ring at 6 months to the day on her birthday. She took a 5-point major. Literally, people were saying, Pricilla, you have to go back in the ring now. Pricilla, I had no idea what I was doing. She ended up finishing, and she showed. I was extremely fortunate that I got this bitch.
Okay, the next question is for Chris, and it comes from one of our Italian viewers, Davide Ceci, and he wants to know how you were attracted to the breed, but why did you decide you wanted to be a breeder of Akita?
I'm not sure I decided that. It sort of decided that for me. I had a vision of a dog. And, again, Priscilla's views and mine are very similar, as you'll see in most cases. And Mimi was that dog. Satchmo was that dog. And so I wanted to, they were my standard bearer, but you know what? They had their faults too. And I wanted to have a dog that looked, like that. And, to Priscilla's, Kuma, Priscilla's bitch, Dallas's mom, was a tremendous female. And, I look back and I think about this, and everybody on this call knows how much Dallas meant to me and to my program. But if you think about it, she produced 2 best in show sons, 2 best in specialty show sons. And then those dogs produced 2 best in specialty show sons, so grandsons, not 2 best, but 2 best in show, 1 best in specialty show grandson. I don't know that there's a dam in history that has done that. And, and she's not my breeding guys. That was Priscilla's. And I was just blessed to have her in my program. And so, that's, I really thought one of our best achievements was when we bred to Ransom and produced All About Dallas. Dowd was a tremendous female. But on your website, I see a lot of dogs that I like. At one point, somebody, thank you, published a picture of Pharrell's party doll. Chandra had her. She was going to breed her to Satchmo. I contacted Chandra, put a deposit down on that. That was really before I had really done my homework. I don't know that breed would have produced something spectacular. They were both spectacular dogs, but there wasn't as much commonality in their pedigrees. You can breed 2 spectacular dogs and even get a spectacular offspring that cannot reproduce itself. So I was always, after sort of some lessons on that, I was always concerned about, you take dog A that's, absolutely stellar, and bitch B that's absolutely stellar. They may or may not produce something, and even if they did, can that dog replicate itself? And so I was really looking, and I think hopefully I established some kind of consistency over a period of time.
Perfect.
Barbara, there is a question by the public. Maybe it's better if you read.
I can understand that.
Was Saber better for you as a show dog or as a stallion?
Both.
Both.
He was the stallion and show dog, that we had and we kept.
They mean stallion as in stud dog.
Right.
Not stallion.
Right. Yeah. In the translation, they mean stud dog. But I think you got that.
Okay.
But, one of the questions was no kennels and dogs spun off. Well, hopefully I gave Pricilla what Pricilla gave to me, I was able to pass on. And Timber Sky with Jody did some great things there. Moonlight did some great things there. And frankly, Francie and I have just, for some reason, always been siblings from another mother. Our thinking of dogs is so on the same line. And Minda has done some wonderful things with that.
Yes. Yes, she has.
Yeah.
Okay, Priscilla, the same question for you from Davide. Why did you decide that you wanted to breed Akita?
Probably
Diplomatic.
Probably farm background. I thought that I had a good quality bitch, and I wanted to continue with that. Although I had a lot of struggles since I lived in Nebraska at the time after I graduated college, and I had farm veterinarians, so we did not have the reproductive vets that we do now. And we didn't have TCIs, and they didn't do AI, so it was very difficult for me to find a stud dog for Kuma. Once I got her proven, and then I was transferred to Indianapolis, I met a veterinarian and I had to marry him. So anyway, I just felt like it was something I always wanted to do, and I thought that I could improve on the breed as far as what I perceive the quality of the Akita to be.
Okay. And Davide also wants to know from both of you, so I'll ask Priscilla first this time. Which dog, no, that's already been asked. How do you see the future for our breed?
I'm sorry, would you repeat that?
How do you see the future for our breed?
I am a little concerned about our lack of substance and size. I think we're getting a little bit too small. I'm very pleased with where our temperaments are going, but I also don't want them to be too soft, I guess is what I want to say. The Akita is, a big dog, and I think he should be like our standard says, not aggressive, because they've taken that out of our standard, but I think he should be something to be watchful of. But I'm mainly concerned about bone, substance, and size.
Okay. I'm not going to ask Chris that question because it's been quite a while since he's been breeding. But I would like to say that we have so many viewers and members that have gotten out of the breed. Nancy Bowen, for example, she wants to get back into the breed since she's been watching. And I also spoke with Jeannie Galindo, and I was wondering, Chris, if you ever think that you might get back into showing or breeding Akita.
I'm sorry, can you repeat it?
He wants to know if you would ever consider getting back into breeding and showing Akitas.
Well, I will have to tell you, after being invited today and looking at all these pedigrees and stuff, it's very tempting. But ultimately, the answer is no.
Okay. Okay, the next question is for Priscilla.
Yes, exactly, vicariously.
Okay, Priscilla, we have a question from an Italian, Claudio D'Agostini, and he would like to know if you could describe the ideal ear
The ideal ear,
on the Akita.
it is actually, I think we're doing very well on ears. It should be slightly forward, follow the crest of neck, rounded on top. I don't like the big ears. They should be properly placed. They shouldn't be out like the flying nun. And I like them to be slightly cupped a little bit, but not falling over. I think we're doing really well on most ears here in the States.
Okay, I've got a question about ears for both of you, or either one of you. When you have an Akita that has a good amount of fur on the inside part of the ear, will that dog usually have thicker cartilage, or they're two separate characteristics?
That's a good question. I've never correlated with hair and the thickness or the cartilage of the ear. I normally don't have trouble with my ears standing. My ears are usually pretty thick, but I guess I can honestly say I've never correlated the amount of hair with the thickness of the cartilage.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay, let's ask the question to Chris.
I really never correlated that with that either.
Mm-hmm. But the fur in the inside of the ear does give the impression of having a thicker ear, which we like.
What you'll find is as we men get older, we get more fur on the inside of our ear too.
That's true.
Oh my goodness.
That was good. Okay, Chris, I've got a question for you from France, from Emma Galou. And she wants to know, what do you think of inbreeding and the loss of AVK, which I'm ignorant. I don't know what that means. Does anyone know what AVK means?
AVK.
I have no idea what that means.
So
Well,
what do you
talk
think
about inbreeding.
Inbreeding?
AZK.
It's probably genetic diversity, I would think is what she's trying to say.
Okay. Yeah. What was the first part of the question?
What do you think about inbreeding and the loss of I think it's genetic diversity. The coefficient. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that in that I tried to be observant, and when the limited amount of Japanese Akitas came over, I understand that was a closed genetic pool, but there was a lot of diversity that came over. And frankly, I don't know that we got the best stuff at that point in time. And we continued to oftentimes genetically, I don't want to say outcross, but dilute. And I think we had to come back. At some point in time, yes, inbreeding is not good, and it's too much. And there's this, you talk about diversity, that's also known as hybrid vigor. And there's no question that there are hybrid vigor. If you ever studied horses, some of the greatest horses were total outcrosses. Then again, oftentimes they could not replicate themselves. Right. So I do believe in hybrid vigor, but I think you can take a pedigree and you can say, okay, I've got a sire that goes back to a line that's similar to mine. I got a dam that dabbles in it but has some differences. As long as I can find that there are no genetic issues like hips and all the other stuff in that dam's line, and it gives me the qualities that I need, whatever that might be, more annihilation, whatever it is. I think that is really what I looked for, and it did give us some hybrid vigor.
I tend to agree with Chris, and a lot of it I think goes back to health. I think if we do too much inbreeding, I do worry about our health, whether it's, hips or SA or PRA or whatever.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, you never know what ticking time bomb you're bringing in when you go outside, because all of a sudden you're introducing new genetics.
Exactly.
That was well said. Yeah.
Okay, I have another question from.
This page,
Hold on, Richard. Chris has something else.
this page has really allowed me to look at some wonderful dogs, and there's some beautiful dogs on this page. I think it's been reiterated on this page, though, that it's difficult to tell from a still picture. All the time, you can stack a dog to look more angulated or less angulated, etc. But I think you breeders are so fortunate right now because the pedigree bases online are incredible, and you have pictures of these dogs. Back then, I was trying to thumb through Akita World, which at one point was black and white, or go to shows or that kind of thing, and I stream these pedigrees out, and my whole floor in one room of my house would be pedigrees backing to another one. So take advantage of those tools that you have because they're amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we have videos now too, so that's awesome.
Yeah, that too. You're bringing me up to the new century. I mean, wow.
Okay, another question from Emma Galou. She wants to know, let's ask Priscilla first. In your experience, what quality is the hardest to fix? And it can be regarding either behavior or structure.
I'm going to say bone, size, and I'm going to just say bone and size. And you can't get it in one generation. You have a bitch that's slide and bone, you breed her to a hunk of a male, you're still going to get about 50-50. I think it's going to take 2 to 3 generations to bring back our bone and substance.
Mm-hmm. And Chris, how would you answer that?
Well, I think the size, substance, and type, if you've got pointed ears placed on the top of the, on the head, those kind of things, I don't know. That's what I would look for. But one of the things I will say again about this page, you folks that are in the international breeding programs that you've done, Mexico, Spain, etc., just from the pictures I've seen, you've done a hell of a job because there's some amazing dogs internationally. And I know, Dave Killaley with Redwitch was a big part of that in the UK for a long time. And I always admired Dave's dogs. In fact, I tried to work with him, but it's across the ocean and it's difficult, as you know. But you guys internationally, good job.
Okay.
This question maybe about the side.
I'm sorry, Antonio.
There is this question about the sides also from the public.
Okay. Do you think a lot of inbreeding causes loss of size?
Priscilla, go ahead and handle that. I'll talk about it too.
Because I try to breed for, that's not the only thing I breed for, but I try to breed for size. And by doing inbreeding, Julie Hain, if you ask about a mentor, and this is years ago, Julie and Lou Hain might have been one of my mentors, and they were the Haas, the Ransom, the place I got Tessa, etc. And she always told me that small trumps big. So I've always remembered that. So when I breed my bitch, I'm certainly not going to breed to a small male. So if I'm doing inbreeding or line breeding, I'm going to go to a larger male to begin with. So I guess to say, does inbreeding cause, a smaller dog? If you breed wrong, yes, it does. So I just don't breed that way.
I agree with that. And I think generationally, if you tightly inbreed generation after generation, it could reduce size, particularly if you're breeding dogs that have already started to reduce in size. But that takes generations. And my bigger concern about the inbreeding is cementing the faults that you already have, number one, and obviously it can cause genetic disorders. Goshen and Priscilla mentioned that Julie Hayne, they did some pretty tight breedings. I really didn't see their dogs start to reduce in size. I mean, you look at Haas, he was bigger and more substantial than his sire. And that group of dogs was tightly line bred and in a couple cases maybe inbred. So, I think it depends on the dogs that you pick and the dogs that surround them genetically, what you're looking at.
Are there any more questions?
Oh, yes, there are many.
We are
There are
all-
many.
Yes, also from Emma. Okay, this is for both of you. In your opinion, should we choose a well-producing stud that appears on a lot of pedigrees, or a stud less familiar who could bring new lines to your breeding program?
I think it all depends on what you need. I have never been one to go after the popular dog or the top dog in the country or whatever. I think you need to look at phenotype as well as genotype and figure out what your line needs, and then you need to pursue that and go for it. Or you need to see what the stud dogs have produced with what bitches and what lines, and if they're similar in your lines, then you can make a educated decision whether it's something that you want to produce.
And Chris, what would you say about that?
I agree. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
He just asked what you would say about that.
I think Priscilla's right. I don't think it's, I think initially, particularly I did, I wanted to breed to the dog of the day as long as it met my visual needs. I mean, that was the first couple of years I was in. But then I recognized the fact that, there's a lot of spectacular dogs out there that are anomalies. And whether they can replicate themselves, and this is bitches too. I'm not just exclusively limiting this to the sire side. So I don't necessarily. Some dogs show great and look spectacular, and they have great handlers, and that's fine. But I think you have to evaluate the genotype and the phenotype of that dog and the dogs surrounding it. I'm going to throw perusing through this page some dogs that caught my eye, and there's many, by the way, and I apologize I can't mention them all, but there's a dog named Overhill's Cherokee Lightfoot. That dog was very nice to me, but I don't have my hands on that dog. I don't know his bonus substance. There's a bitch that's really spectacular. Her name is Candy, really pretty. Georgie, Francie's dog. These are dogs that appeal to me just from their phenotype. I would have to look at them strongly genotypically as well. And there's many dogs in the past. I mean, Bronze Bruin, Haas I've mentioned several times. I mean, there's a lot of dogs that are really, really nice. Again, Caliber was really a nice dog. And there's more and more. So pardon me, I don't want to offend anybody, but I think if you look at those dogs, you'll see the type of dog that I like.
Mm-hmm.
This question about Brown.
Did I do anything wrong?
You did not. You are fine. Was it easy trying to deal with Judith Dunn when you were using Bronze Bruin? Thanks, Louis. Luis?
I'm sorry, what did I what?
Was it easy dealing with Judith Dunn when you were using Bronze Bruin?
Well, Judy came around. I was a persistent little SOB.
Yeah.
And so she came around, and we did some nice things with Bruin, and obviously he goes back to Saxonal. This isn't a trade secret here. And we really did some nice things, I thought, with Bruin.
I liked it.
and it came and it line bred back into our stuff nicely as well.
Yeah. All right, next question, Antonio.
I think there are.
Antonio, why don't you put the question about the color? Antonio,
Sorry.
there was a question from a viewer about color. There was a
Yes.
question, c'era una
Yes.
domanda sul
I can
colore.
I can answer the question for Pricilla. She just likes red with the black mask, and that's it. That's it. Nothing else.
I will admit that there have been some dogs that have been stunning, and most people know I'm not a fan of white, Ilka. But when we were at the Nationals many, many years ago, she was stunning. I mean, I can certainly overlook color if the dog has everything else, and I will. It's just that my favorite is the red with the black mask, and I have my share of fawns, so the fawn's my second.
Yeah. Okay, there are many Akitas that are solid color. They are breeding together. Do you think it will be a problem later when there won't be any white on them?
I don't really have a preference for that, and I won't worry about it. A good fawn, a really pretty fawn. I got to tell you, Dallas was really pretty, and Dowda was really pretty, although she was a lighter fawn. And what I would like to see is. If they do have those kinds of markings, and brindle's fine. I mean, I'm okay with most of these colors. Let them be rich and dark and deep. I don't really like a washy color, a dirty color. If you're going to have some red, it's nice to have a nice red.
Yeah. Pricilla, did you want to speak to the markings? If you have something with no white or just tippy toes?
I can certainly live with that. Again, as Chris said, it basically depends on your type and your structure and your movement. If the dog doesn't have white on him and everything else looks pretty good, I can certainly overlook the lack of white. Yes, white can make a dog more striking. It can also, make a dog look longer if there's a big white stripe in the middle of him. And I don't mind self-mask either. I would prefer a black mask, but I do not mind the self-mask. I look at some of Jody's dogs that are absolutely stunning that are kind of a Midwest cardboard look, but I can overlook that because of their type and their quality.
Right. Do you think using fawn in red helps to improve pigment?
I think red can help. But I think brindle can help the most.
Pricilla?
I agree. Brindle can bring back your pigment pretty well. I think you can get good pigment. I don't have a pigment problem because I don't breed the whites usually. But I do think the reds and the fawns, I think your fawns can bring back a lot of good color if they're bred right.
So with so many people that are color hunters for the black dogs, why have you chosen not to be?
For the what color?
The black dogs.
This is just my opinion, and I probably will get slammed for it. I think my greatest temperaments, whether it's just a overall good dog, are the fawns first, then the reds, then the whites, then the blacks. And I just have not had very good luck with my blacks and my brindles on temperament.
Chris, why did you not lean towards having black dogs?
Because, and again, I don't want to slight anybody or anything like that, but the black dogs tended, in my mind, to have a pedigree that was not as compatible with my lineage. And in a lot of cases, not all, but in a lot of cases, it seemed like to me their ear set was a little higher, and their ear wasn't quite as rounded, and that was typical of their lineage. So the phenotype and the genotype matched, and that wasn't an ear set and a head that I prefer.
Right. Richard, do you have additional questions?
Yes, we do, from Tracy Morgan, Wales, United Kingdom. And she asks both of you, do you feel the current breed standard is clear and detailed enough?
I personally think any standard for any breed of dog is extremely subjective. I don't think our standard is bad. I think it can be interpreted just about any way that you want it. I think it's fine.
Chris?
I would really say that too. I looked at the breed standard. It's been changed a little bit since I was in the breed, but there are still some non-specifics, like, the term moderate is a tough one, and that might be different between me and another person. And I think we got into a situation. My first champion, Kenneth Crumb Satchel, was a Satchel daughter, and at the time, she was a little bit shunned, if you will. I don't know if I'd call that, but because she was considered unsmart. Yeah, we went ahead and finished her, and that kind of thing. And I think that this has come subsequently, where these dogs that don't have evenly placed markings, particularly if they're a pinto, over their body, have become more and more acceptable. I don't really have a feeling about that, but some people do. So maybe that should be a little clearer in the standard. But I would say every standard, I don't care what breed it is very subjective and has broad terms that can be differently correlated. And I think the Akita standards today is a pretty good one.
Okay, I have another question from Tracy Morgan regarding the standard. Is there any part of the breed standard you feel no longer reflects the dogs we see today?
I'm going to say
I
I don't think so. I think the standard is written. Our standard in the United States was changed not too long ago, taking out a few words and adding a few others. But as Chris said, one of the nicest bitches that I remember ever seeing was the Mad Hatter, and that's when the standard was talking about a white bitch has no black mask, and she was a gorgeous bitch, and she was a champion. So I think we're fine where we are.
And I don't know that I'm really qualified because I haven't, been to a dog show and had my hands on these dogs in a long time. I understand just your general conversation that we've lost size and substance, and that I think needs to be interpreted correctly by the standard. Again, a 26.5-inch, 26 3/4-inch male with some substance is really what I think the breed should be. Kabuki dogs and Triple K dogs all exhibited that, and I prefer that type of a dog.
I agree.
Well,
by the way, I'm very impressed with Tracy's entries on this website. I can tell she's a pedigree hound.
Yes. Next
Well,
question,
Okay,
Richard.
I've got two questions from Matthew Bostock from Ruthville in the UK. And he would like to ask you, with your vast experience, what advice would you give to new breeders in the breed and some of the more experienced breeders?
And Chris will probably say this, if you really want to get into showing and breeding, I think you need to study pedigrees, offspring, make sure your mentor or your breeder is there to support you, and will help you along the way. Check the health quality of the puppy that you're getting into. Check the temperament of what they are producing. Go to dog shows, put your hands on dogs, talk to people. Try to make sure that people will talk back to you. I know there are a lot of people that don't want to be bothered, but that's what we are here for. That's what we need to do with our proteges. I'm not going to be breeding all that much because every dog I keep from now on, I'll be in my mid 70s by the time the dog dies. And I just probably won't be able to handle it. So I need to depend on other people taking over what I think I have produced. And I think that you need to look at health, pedigree, and temperament and get your hands on the dogs.
I think it's wonderful, Priscilla, that you are considering the future of your bloodlines. I think a lot of times the bloodlines are not being passed on and they're just dying with the breeder, which is a shame for our breed.
I agree.
You're gonna feel that until I give you all mine.
Oh, and Francie said she's leaving me all her dogs. I really regret saying that.
From somebody who's been out of the breed for a while, I would have to say I feel like those individuals who picked up that bloodline, which Priscilla, you're all certainly part of that, have moved forward and kept some of those qualities intact. So I've been really lucky. I had some wonderful people to work with, and and I'd like to think that they would continue to do that, but with an eye for improvement into the future.
Okay, the next question is again from Matthew. For both of you, over the years competing against many of your friends in the breed, did it teach you anything about how competition affects friendships? And what's your best advice that you have on this subject?
As an exhibitor, you need to be a gracious loser as well as a gracious winner. I did not mind, or I do not mind losing to a good quality dog. But if I lose to a poor quality dog, I want to know why. I'll look at the pedigree. I'll go home and look at I buy a catalog every show I go to. I look at the catalog and say, why did my dog lose this? Now, granted, training and behavior can make a big difference in a show ring. But if my dog was acting like it should, a show dog, why did I lose to it? And what is the judge looking for? And then I go back and I look at, AKC has a pretty good thing on a judge's history, where they came from. If they came from a German Shepherd line, do they want a sloping back? And maybe that's why they picked that dog. Do they want angulation that the knees touch the ground? Something like that. So I try to study why my dog might have lost, but I'm not a meat user by any matter of means, and I don't think you should be. It's a dog show. There's another day. There's another judge. Hopefully that'll happen.
And Chris?
My feeling on that is it is a challenge, and people have different personalities, and we should. And it is difficult. We want to win. We're very involved with our dogs emotionally. They're an extension of us, and sometimes, unfortunately, they're an extension of our egos. And I think you have to put some of that aside and be objective and enjoy other successes as well, be supportive of their successes. And because it can be challenging, and you have a good dog, and this dog is winning, and you think this dog is the be-all, end-all. There is no dog that is the be-all, end-all. You always want to look to improve. And you can be humbled very quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Indeed.
Okay, I have two more questions. One is for Chris and one is for Priscilla. The question for Priscilla comes from Wendy Solo. And she asks, can you please share the minimum health clearances you insist on before using a dog in a breeding program? I do know that you never settle for minimum. Can you also share other testing you do?
I do basically chick. I do on my personal dogs, I do hips, elbows, patellas. I do cardiac because I have produced a cardiac issue in one of my breedings. And I do the advanced cardiac. And then after that, if she or he clears, then I just do the regular cardiac the next year. I do thyroid, and I do my thyroid every year. I don't go through necessarily Michigan State or Cornell, but I run a thyroid panel every year on my dogs. And I do iSurf. I require for any bitch that comes in to be bred to my dog, I require that they do hips, surf, hips and surf, hips and iSurf. If I look at the pedigree and I say, oh, no, this line is producing yada, 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 then I will ask them to go one step further. But my husband was a veterinarian, and so I could get most of my stuff done very reasonably. And now at dog shows, they have the mobile x-ray units and stuff like that. We have surf clinics. We have cardiac clinics. So we can still get stuff done extremely reasonably priced for all of those things now as well when dog shows start back up. So I do everything possible that I can on my own dogs.
Okay, and the last question I have here is for Chris, and it comes from Paula Lane. And she writes, since I don't know you personally, and I have never had the chance to see your dogs except for in photos, describe what characteristics define a North Star Akita.
That's a great question. So I'd like to, one of the words that I would use would be consistency, but I think I'd like to, and I was reading towards this, and Satchmo, you guys did a interview with Ben Fix, and she talked about Satchmo, and I can't reiterate what she said enough, and his offspring. So I wanted I mean, if I could characterize my breeding program, it was size, substance, moderate age, nice heads with a nice ears. You know who I really throw this question to? Francie.
Yeah.
Would you please give me what there?
What made a North Star dog a North Star dog?
A lot of style, really pretty moving dogs. You could always see a North Star dog because they have that phenomenal footfall, exactly what it was supposed to be. And they used themselves really well. They had really great follow through their body. They had good substance. They had good size. Some of them better than others.
We lost Barbara.
Okay, I do have one more question. I'm looking for it. It was sent in by Maria, but I had already transcribed the questions before I received hers. But Antonio, there are a couple of questions I see on the sideboard. If you'd like to ask Pricilla.
Yes.
There's one from Vito Vittore.
Yes, there is one from Vito in Italian. Can you translate?
Yes, and I also have found Maria's question.
Okay.
Okay, the question from Vito from Italy is for Pricilla, and he would like to ask, why did you decide to import an offspring of Bumblebee from Russia?
I liked Bumblebee. I realized he wasn't as big a dog as I wanted. I wanted to get into maybe a different line on the bitches side. The Bumblebee line is actually from my side, my line. And I just wanted to try something different. Unfortunately, she did not pass her health clearances, and it was not something that I was willing to take a chance on. So she was spayed and placed in a pet home. She was a phenomenal bitch, finished in a heartbeat her championship, and had a temperament to die for. But I did not pursue breeding her.
Okay.
There is another question about, for me, stupid argument about a problem that we have here in Europe, because our standard, in our standard in Europe, there are problem with a dark spot on the tongue.
On the
That's my
tongue.
question.
There's a problem with what?
The
About
the FCI
dark spot on
standard
the tongue.
considers black spots on the tongue as a fault.
Oh,
We have this problem in Europe.
Bad connection.
I guess I don't.
My internet
I-
decided to go cranky.
Okay, I guess I don't consider
It
that
says I
much
have
of a
5G. Hang on, guys.
Go ahead, Priscilla.
I guess I don't
We're
consider
working on it.
much of an issue. It's not something I
Anyway.
guess I look at on my puppies, but I think I would notice it if it was a real issue. I don't think we have that much of a problem here unless I'm just being blind.
So,
Okay. The last question I have comes from Maria Nelson, and she asks, how many generations in a pedigree analysis do you concentrate on when trying to select your next breed?
I personally look at the first 3 generations, but I know I'm pretty familiar with what's behind after the 3rd generation, and I'll go back and see where my line breeding and inbreeding are. In fact, when I was asked to do this, I pulled up a bunch of pedigrees of my own dogs and went back and looked, and there's a lot of inbreeding clear back on my 5th generation in a lot of my dogs. But I use the first 3 generations when I'm doing a study for a breeding program.
Okay.
Chris probably has better feel for that.
Barbara is coming back.
Okay, here's another question from
Here we
the
go.
viewer. Priscilla,
There we go.
I love
We
your
found you.
Okay, sorry, y'all.
We're back in business.
Okay.
So
I'm reading a question for
If you
Priscilla.
answered, I can't remember.
Antonio, can you hear us?
Yes.
It's still not connecting well.
We're doing great.
Okay, Priscilla, if you can hear me over the other. I don't know who this is from. It just says Facebook user.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right, go ahead, Chris. Did you hear Chris's answer, or do we go on to another question?
I did not.
Well, we've done about 5 more questions in the meantime, and we lost you again.
Yes.
Okay. Somebody wrote, it only says Facebook user, so I don't know the name. Priscilla, I love your Rachel so much. I looked up her pedigree only to see she is turning 10 in 2 days. How many pups were in Rachel's litter, and did Patty have Rachel since she was a wee little baby?
There were 5 puppies in that litter. Patty did not want to take a puppy. Another friend of mine was taking a bitch out of that litter, and they came together. They live about 3 hours from me, and they came together to pick up the puppy. And I've always liked Patty Nolte and her husband Terry, and I've always thought they've done a phenomenal job in showing dogs. Her first breed are Belgians. So when I put Gabe's puppy in the crate in the back, I put Rachel in the back also with her and didn't tell her. And she didn't know it until she got home. Patty has done phenomenal things with Rachel. I have been fortunate enough to tag into breedings and done suggestive breedings. One of my best breedings I ever did with her, and she might be one of my best offsprings, was when I bred her to Chester, and I got a bitch named Ziva. Ziva is almost flawless to me, and her half sister, which is Mariko, who won the winner's bitch 2 years ago at our national. She has produced extremely well. Unfortunately, if we're not able to have our national here in this year, I was planning on having Rachel and have her offspring here, and Rachel would be in Veterans Bitch, and Patty said she's not gray at all. She looks great. So yeah, Rachel has been an awesome producer for me.
Mhm. Okay, and I have a particular interest in Mariko. I think she's one of the most beautiful bitches of our time. Will you consider a specials career for her, or is she more important to you in the whelping box?
I have tried to breed her twice unsuccessfully. I will try to breed her to a coyote that runs across my front yard the next time, just to get her proven. I'm kidding, guys. I'm kidding. Um, anyway, I will do a breeding with probably a natural or a side by side to try to get her proven, and then I'll go back to my original plans with her. As far as the specials, it is not easy to special a dog when I work full time, and I'm not a wealthy person. I'm kind of old, but I'm not wealthy. So I'm not sure what I will do with her as far as showing.
Okay. Anything else you would like to say? Antonio, are there any more questions?
I have a question by me. So when I started with the Akitas, I had an idea about the type, but after I starting with the breed, I change a little bit in few time and year. I think like everyone can do. So are you mature your ideal type in the time? You start with a perfect idea of type, or you change in time your ideal type?
Chris, take that question.
We don't have Chris,
Oh, you don't?
just the three of us.
That's okay. Um, I, as I mentioned earlier, I was very fortunate to get my first dog, and she turned out to be a great show Akita. But I learned a lot from her. I would have liked a little more angulation. So yes, I have changed a little bit over the years. I still stick to my same type that I like, the bigger boned. Um, I think our coats are getting a little bit too bushy or too long, but the head is important, and that's always been important to me. The smaller ears, I don't think I have changed much, and I do think my line has improved to what I consider my more ideal Akita. I like a little shorter coupled Akita than what our standard calls for. And I like a doggy bitch, and that is not correct according to our standard.
So I think we have other question maybe.
I see one more question on the
Yeah,
screen about the
yeah.
semen depository. Speaking of passing on your bloodline, do you have any thoughts on the proposed Akita Club of America semen depository?
I do. I think potentially it could have a really good. I think it could be a really good idea. I think a lot of things are going to have to be ironed out. I freeze all my dogs now because I think it's a travesty that there is no frozen semen on Haas, on Ransom, a lot of our older dogs, because it just wasn't done back then, and it was expensive. We can now get it done for a very reasonable price. But I think there's going to have to be a lot of things ironed out. And one of the things is, okay, so I have hero semen. Why would I want to put hero semen into a group bank when I would have no control on who that semen might be bred to? And maybe I don't understand all the ramifications of how it's going to be handled. But if hero was going to be bred to a bitch that I think would be totally disastrous, do I have any say so over it? And if I'm dead, I don't care. But if I'm alive, I would care where that breeding would go, and then how is that going to be compensated?
Good answer. Okay, Barbara, are you with us? Barbara? You're having trouble. So.
Yeah. There was other question about mover, I think. That's question.
Okay, can you read that on the bottom of the screen?
Hang on. If you are breeding, which dog did you? No, read it to me.
Okay, in your breeding career, which dog did you particularly appreciate in the movement, or the dog that you really appreciated in your breeding career?
Murphy is the dog I think had impeccable movement. It is not correct for our standard. It is not modern. He did a lot of breed winning, but he really did a lot of group winning because he could fly around the ring. He had a lot of extension and drive, and it was beautiful to watch. And I think Chris Weatherman's dogs had a lot of beautiful side gait and movement. And maybe it was a little extreme, but it was beautiful to watch.
Okay. I read your interview that you did, I believe, in 1992 in Akita World.
Uh-huh.
So why don't you tell our viewers the meaning of your kennel name?
Of course, I was young, naive, and stupid. I was 21 years old, and I bought my first Akita, and I thought I better come up with a kennel name because someday I'm going to be really famous. So I wanted to stick to a Japanese name, and now after all these years, when I talk to someone from Japan, they said it's very difficult to pronounce, but it means black mask.
Okay. And you also mentioned in that interview that breeders need to be more honest with each other and talk about problems and genetic problems. Do you think now that almost 30 years have gone by since you've done that interview, do you think that breeders are addressing issues and being more open and honest?
Because of social media, I'm not sure people have much option anymore. I think because we can put our OFAs, which is Orthopedic Foundation for Animals, it's where we do our hips, elbows, patellas, thyroid, everything. That is a public forum, and we can look there. And it brings up a red flag if you've got a dog that's health clearances are not published, then I really question why. I do think we're a little more honest. I think we need to continue going that way.
Great. And one more thing I noticed in your interview, you talked about your booklet, your 50-page booklet that you gave to your puppy buyers, and how you would like to make a book. Did you increase the amount of information you put in that booklet over the years?
I've actually decreased it again because there's so much public information available about the breed and about the Akita. And I do my own booklet now, and it's probably 20 to 25 pages now, but it mainly talks about the Creole line and the parents and their health clearances and health of the puppy that they're buying and the food that I feed and what I expect of them and my contract.
Okay. So what is the COVID situation in your area? How have you been living and dealing with that?
I still work in the public. I work for a veterinarian. We do what we call curbside. We mask and glove when we talk to anybody one-on-one, but basically everything is done from the car. We take the puppy or the kitten into the veterinarian. The veterinarian talks to the client over the phone. We check them out with a credit card machine over the phone. We just opened up restaurants. I think we're a little early on doing this. We still have social distancing, and restaurants are supposed to be doing 50% capacity. I think time will tell. We still do not have hair salons, obviously, opened, nails opened, or massage parlors open, that type of thing. And I don't think we should at this time, but that's just my personal opinion. I think we need to be very cautious because I think it's going to come back to bite us if we go all out again.
Okay. I guess this will be my last question. I was hoping that Barbara and Francis and Chris would be coming back to us.
I don't back.
They won't be coming back.
They can't. No.
Okay. Well, this is my last question. Seeing as that you're from Indianapolis and the national specialty will supposedly take place in October. Some shows are starting up. I see in the United States, in Georgia. I saw you living there. What do you think? Give me a percentage of will the national take place in Indianapolis in October? What percentage would you give that?
I'm going to say probably not. Unfortunately, I really, really wanted it. I was going to take all my kennel, all their offspring, and do everything possible to support it. I live about 30 minutes from the show site, which would have been really easy for me to have handled. I was really looking forward to it, but it's an inside show. I just don't see how we can do it and still be safe.
Okay. Well, on behalf of everyone, it's been such a pleasure getting to know you better, learning about the history of your kennel, and it's always nice to see you. And your answers have been really, really good and thorough and well thought out, and it's been really a big pleasure for us to have you here with us. Antonio, would you like to say something?
I want to say just thank you to both, but the Chris is gone, so thank you to you, and I hope to meet you soon at national. Maybe to meet also Mariko because she is lovely, and thank you again.
Okay.
We also thank Chris Weatherman.
Yes.
Pricilla, I've had the pleasure to chat with Pricilla in America. I've never met Chris Weatherman, so it was really exciting and interesting to hear his point of view as well.
You would love
we have
Chris.
to convince Chris to give us another interview with a better.
You could meet him. He's an awesome man.
Yes, I think so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks, guys. Nice to talk to you.
Thank you very much.
Priscilla.
Right,
okay.
bye.
One last thing for our viewers. We will be having next Sunday at the same time, we will be having Nancy Fisk of Kiko Kennels. So we will look forward to that as well. Please send your questions for Nancy Fisk, and we will try to answer as many as possible. Thank you once again, Pricilla and Chris Weatherman.
Ciao a tutti. Good night.
Good night. Bye.
Good night.